Close your eyes and imagine the mists rolling over the green hills of England. Imagine ancient forests, stone churches, flickering torches in castle towers, and the sound of distant bells echoing through time. Tonight, we journey through the entire history of medieval England, from the fall of the Roman Empire to the rise of the Tudors, not as students or scholars, but as travelers of time, drifting gently through the centuries as though floating upon a quiet river of memory. Let us begin where all great stories begin, in silence and in change. 1. The fall of Rome and the dark beginnings, 410 to 600. Close your eyes, let your breath settle, and allow the ancient mists of time to carry you far, far away to the very edges of what was once called Britannia. It is the year 410. The once mighty Roman Empire is crumbling. Across the known world, cities burn, roads fall to ruin, and legions march home, never to return. Among those abandoned provinces lies the misty island of Britain. For 4 centuries, Roman roads cut through its forests, Roman law governed its people, and Roman coins filled its markets. But now, the eagles have flown. The legions are gone, and in their place, silence. The villas begin to rot. Aqueducts run dry. The great towns once filled with life become shells of stone and dust. The people, left behind, must learn to live without empire. And into that vacuum comes not peace, but waves upon waves of change. From across the sea come new voices, Germanic tongues spoken by the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, warriors turned settlers. They do not come as invaders at first, but as mercenaries, hired by desperate local leaders to defend against raiders from the north. But soon, the hired swords become masters. These newcomers push westward, seizing lands, driving the native Britons into the hills and coasts. Out of their settlements rise the seeds of new kingdoms, Kent, Sussex, Wessex. The names still linger in our maps today. But what did it feel like to live then? It was a world of smoke curling from thatched roofs, of hearth fires that kept the old stories alive. A world where gods walked in forests and omens whispered in the wind. Christianity had been planted here by Roman priests, but now, cut off from Rome, it flickered like a lonely candle in a storm. And yet, out of this darkened age, light would stir again. In the north, monks from Ireland, gentle, learned, fearless, brought with them books, language, and hope. They walked barefoot through the glens, carrying gospel not by sword, but by psalm. And slowly, the wild island began to dream once more. This was not yet England. It was a land in between, a land of twilight and transformation. And so ends our first chapter. The Romans are gone. The Saxons have come. The old gods are dying. The new faith is rising. Sleep now, in the quiet of these ancient fields. The world is not yet awake. But it will be. 2. The Anglo-Saxon Age, 600 to 800. The mists have lifted slightly. The fires still flicker in the hearths of wooden halls, and now the land known once as Britannia has become a patchwork of small kingdoms. This is the age of the Anglo-Saxons. It is a world where the king is also a warlord. His strength lies not only in his sword, but in the loyalty of his men, his thanes, who eat at his table and ride with him into battle. Gold rings are gifted for valor. Stories are sung in smoky feasting halls, tales of dragons, doomed heroes, and the ever-turning wheel of fate. 7 main kingdoms rise and fall: Northumbria in the wild north, Mercia in the heartlands, East Anglia near the sea, Wessex in the south, Kent and Sussex along the coast, and tiny Essex watching the rivers. They trade, they war, they marry, they plot. But amidst this fragile balance, something deeper begins to grow. the soul of a people. It begins with the written word. Monks, cloistered away in stone churches and wooden huts, begin copying not only scriptures, but stories. Epics like Beowulf, written in a language that would one day become English. They illuminate the margins with golden vines and bright-eyed beasts. They chant Latin beneath candlelight. They record laws, dreams, lineages. And slowly, from silence, a culture awakens. In the kingdom of Northumbria, the twin monasteries of Jarrow and Monkwearmouth glow like beacons. It is here that a monk named Bede writes the ecclesiastical history of the English people. He tells of kings and saints, of miracles and battles, of how the pagan tribes of Angles and Saxons came to kneel before the cross. His work is more than a history. It is a mirror in which a young land sees its face for the first time. But all is not peace. The kingdoms are not content with their borders. Northumbria and Mercia vie for dominance. Wessex, still rising, watches quietly. Kings are crowned and murdered. Sons betray fathers. Faith wars with pride. The land is restless, beautiful, brutal. And in the shadows, another threat begins to stir. Longships are being carved in the frozen fjords of the north. Men with axe and wolfskin cloaks begin to dream of southern shores. They do not yet come in force, but they will. And when they do, they will bring fire. But for now, the land is green. The meadows bloom, the monks sing, the kings feast, and the stories grow. This is the England before England. It is humble, it is proud, it is brutal, it is poetic, it is building something, slowly, painfully, beautifully. And in the stillness of this age, beneath the sound of church bells and war horns, you may hear the beating heart of a nation being born. Sleep now, as the land dreams of unity. It does not yet know what it will become, but it is learning. 3. The Viking raids in Danish England, 800 to 950. The wind shifts, the seas grow restless, and from the north, a new sound cuts through the quiet rhythm of the Anglo-Saxon life, the low thunder of oars, the shriek of gulls trailing longships, the battle cry of men who fear nothing and take everything. The Vikings have come. They arrive first as raiders. In 793, the holy island of Lindisfarne is attacked. Monks are slaughtered, treasures stolen, altars shattered. It is not just a physical blow. It is spiritual, symbolic. If God's house can burn, what is safe? Other monasteries follow. Jarrow, Iona, Repton. No coast is untouched. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, once warring amongst themselves, now face a storm they cannot ignore. The Danes, the Norwegians, the men of the fjords and ice come not only to steal, but to stay. By the mid-9th century, the Viking raids become full invasions. Armies arrive in waves. They build winter camps. They carve out territory. They take entire cities and rename them. York becomes Jorvik. Nottingham, Derby, Lincoln, each falls under the shadow of the Danelaw. The Viking ruled half of England. The kingdoms falter. Northumbria crumbles. East Anglia burns. Mercia fractures. Only one kingdom stands firm. Wessex, and one man leads it. Alfred, the Great. He is not just a warrior. He is a thinker, a scholar, a strategist. He reads Latin, studies theology, and dreams of a united England. He builds burhs, fortified towns to resist Viking sieges. He reforms the army. He strengthens the navy. He writes law codes, translates sacred texts, and kindles learning. And when the Vikings come for Wessex, Alfred does not break. At the Battle of Edington in 878, he defeats the great Viking king Guthrum, who later accepts baptism. It is a rare, fragile peace. But Alfred does not rest. He sees beyond war. He dreams of one people, the angel sin. The English race. After Alfred, his son Edward the Elder, and his formidable daughter Ethel fled, Lady of the Mercians, push back the Viking lines. Town by town, field by field, they reclaim the land. By 927, Athelstan, Alfred's grandson, is crowned king of all England. He is the first to truly wear that title. Under his rule, England becomes a concept, not just a collection of kingdoms, a single realm, a single crown. But the Vikings do not vanish. They remain in the north. They intermarry. They trade. They worship their gods in secret, and sometimes in open defiance. Their blood mixes with the English. And from this mingling of sword and shield, language and law, a new identity begins to take shape. The Vikings have changed England, and England has changed them. Now, as the fires of invasion dim and a fragile peace returns, you may rest for a moment. The storms have passed, the land breathes again. Sleep now, in the hush after chaos. The age of Alfred is over, but new winds will rise. The Norman Conquest and William the Conqueror, 1066. The year is 1066. The air is as thick with omens. Comets blaze across the sky. Monks murmur of prophecy. And in the heart of England, a throne stands uncertain, newly emptied, dangerously contested. King Edward the Confessor has died. He was a pious man, soft-spoken, saintly, and beloved by many. But he left behind no child, no clear heir. And as his soul drifts to rest, 3 men move to claim the English crown. The first is Harold Godwinson, a powerful Anglo-Saxon noble, swift to be crowned. England calls him their chosen king. The second is Harald Hardrada, the formidable king of Norway, a warrior of fire and frost who believes his claim lies through Viking blood. And the third is William, Duke of Normandy, across the Channel in France. Cunning, iron-willed, and relentless. He claims that Edward once promised him the crown, and that Harold swore an oath to uphold it. The stage is set for a season of thunder. First comes Harald Hardrada, storming into the north with longships and sword. Harold Godwinson rides to meet him. At the Battle of Stamford Bridge, English steel and strategy prevail. The Viking king falls. His army breaks. But there is no time for rest. Even as the blood dries on the northern fields, William lands in the south. The Normans come not just as conquerors, but as a machine. Cavalry, crossbowmen, heavy armored knights. They are trained, disciplined, and led by a man who knows no fear. Harold turns south. 2 armies meet at a quiet hill near Hastings. What follows is one of the most fateful battles in English history. For hours they clash, shield walls, volleys, charges. The English fight bravely, holding the high ground. But in the chaos, Harold is struck. An arrow to the eye, legend says. His body is cut down. His men scatter, and by nightfall, William is victor. The Norman conquest has begun. England, once ruled by Saxon lords and Viking bloodlines, now falls under a new dynasty. William becomes William the Conqueror, crowned on Christmas Day in Westminster Abbey. The ceremony is tense. Outside, Norman guards mistake the cheers for revolt. Fires erupt. The air smells of smoke and fear even as prayers are spoken. William wastes no time. He orders the building of castles, stone fortresses to enforce Norman control. The Tower of London rises. Motte and Bailey strongholds dot the land. The landscape itself begins to change. He commissions the Domesday Book, a survey of everything: land, livestock, wealth, population. No inch of England escapes his ledger. It is a record of power, control, and ambition. But the Norman conquest is more than military. The French language becomes the tongue of court and law. The Saxon nobles are stripped of land. In their place, Norman barons rule. Justice, inheritance, governance, everything is reshaped. Yet the English endure. They keep their songs, their saints, their soil. Over time, Norman and Saxon blood mix, names blend, words fuse, and from that fusion, modern English is born, not just as a language, but as a people. It is a time of loss, of change, of forced transformation, but also of birth. From the fire of conquest, a new England emerges. Now, as the night deepens, let the clang of swords fade, let the stones of new castles cool, let the crown rest on the brow of the conqueror. Sleep, gentle listener, as the old world ends and a new one begins. 5. The Norman Kings and Feudal England, 1066 to 1154. The dust of Hastings has settled, but the shadow of conquest remains. England now speaks two tongues, one for the ruling class and one for the ruled. In courtly halls, Norman French reigns. But in the villages, the fields, the taverns and churches, the Old English still lingers on the lips of common folk, soft and enduring like worn stone. William the Conqueror rules with unflinching purpose. He crushes resistance in the north with ruthless fury, laying waste to entire villages in what will be remembered as the harrying of the north. The people starve. The fields are salted. The message is clear. Rebellion will be met with fire. But William is not only a warrior, he is an organizer. His rule brings order, not chaos. The feudal system he enforces divides the land with precision. Every man owes service to another. From the peasant in his hovel to the knight on horseback, all are bound in chains of loyalty, each link leading upward to the king. When William dies in 1087, the kingdom does not pass smoothly. His eldest son, Robert, inherits Normandy. His second son, William Rufus, takes England. But Rufus is wild, suspicious, and greedy. He builds more castles, taxes the people harshly, and feuds with the church. He dies mysteriously, an arrow through the chest while hunting in the New Forest. Some whisper it was murder, others call it justice. Then comes Henry VIII, the youngest of William's sons, a scholar king, fluent in Latin and clever with law. He stabilizes the realm, mends the rift with the church, and builds a stronger system of royal justice, but fate deals him a cruel blow. In 1120, Henry's only legitimate son, William the Aetheling, drowns when the White Ship sinks in the Channel. An entire generation of English nobility perishes with him. Henry is left without an heir. He names his daughter Matilda as successor. But when Henry dies, the nobles choose another, Stephen of Blois, Henry's nephew, charming and generous, but weak in will. And so begins one of the darkest chapters in England's medieval tale, the anarchy. A civil war erupts. Matilda and Stephen battle for the crown. Castles are seized, loyalties shift, whole regions become lawless. Chroniclers write, Christ and his saints slept, as lords become tyrants, and the poor suffer in silence. Matilda comes close to ruling. She enters London. She is even declared Lady of the English. But her pride alienates allies, and she is driven out. Stephen keeps the crown, but never secures peace. His reign becomes a long sigh of exhaustion. Yet from this chaos, a seed is planted. Matilda's son, Henry of Anjou, watches, waits, and grows stronger. He is the grandson of a king, the son of a warrior empress, and destined to become the greatest of them all. When Stephen dies in 1154, the crown passes, at last, to Henry. And so begins the mighty house of Plantagenet. Now rest in the hush after storm. The war has quieted. The land, though scarred, begins to breathe again. Sleep gently as the torch is passed to a new dynasty, one that will shine bright, burn long, and leave its mark in both glory and blood. 6. The Plantagenets and the struggle with power. 1154–1300. The year is 1154. England is weary from war, but a new king brings with him fire and focus. He is young, determined, and carries with him not just a sword, but a mind sharp as any blade. His name is Henry Plantagenet, or as history will remember him, Henry II. He does not only inherit England. Through birth and marriage, Henry rules more land in France than the King of France himself. From Normandy to Aquitaine, from the Scottish border to the Pyrenees, his domain stretches wide and wild. And yet, for all his vastness of power, Henry faces his greatest challenges at home. Henry is a builder, a reformer, a restorer. He strengthens royal authority, imposes order upon feuding barons, and revives the legal system. He sends royal judges to every corner of the realm, and from this grows the very bones of English common law, a system that will outlive every king to follow. But his reign is no calm river. It is a storm. The greatest storm brews between Henry and a man he once called friend, Thomas Becket. Becket was appointed Archbishop of Canterbury by Henry himself. The king believed he would be loyal, but Becket changes. Once crowned, he stands not as a servant of the king, but as a voice for the church. The two men clash bitterly, over rights, over power, over pride. And then, one winter's day, 4 knights, believing they act in the king's interest, ride to Canterbury and cut Becket down at the altar. All of Christendom is shocked. The blood stains the stones. Becket becomes a martyr. Henry, consumed by guilt, walks barefoot to the cathedral and allows himself to be flogged by monks in penance. This is medieval kingship, glorious and grotesque, pious and brutal, ever on the knife's edge. But the drama does not end there. Henry's sons rise against him. The most famous is Richard the Lionheart, golden-haired, brave, and bound for the Crusades. He fights not just Saracens, but his own father. And when Henry dies, broken-hearted and betrayed, Richard ascends to the throne. Richard spends little time in England. He is a warrior first, king second. He wins battles in the Holy Land, earns fame and legend, but leaves the realm in the hands of others. And when Richard dies childless, the crown passes to his brother, John. Here, the tale darkens. John is cunning, suspicious, and driven by insecurity. He loses vast territories in France. He quarrels with nobles, seizes lands, levies cruel taxes. And worst of all, he offends the church and the pope, leading to England being placed under interdict. No mass, no sacraments, no burial rites. The land holds its breath in spiritual fear. The barons rise. In 1215, they force King John to a meadow at Runnymede, beside the River Thames. There, he places his seal on a document that will echo through time. Magna Carta. It is not yet democracy, but it is the seed, a declaration that no man, not even the king, is above the law. John tries to ignore it. War follows. He dies miserably, unloved and sick. His son, Henry III, inherits the crown as a child. His reign lasts over 50 years, longer than any monarch before. But he rules weakly, lavishly, often at odds with his barons. And in 1264, the barons rise again, led by Simon de Montfort. For a time, they hold the king captive. And in the course of that struggle, they call an assembly, a parliament, with knights and townsmen summoned to speak for the people. It is a beginning. Out of the violence and shadows of Plantagenet rule, England begins to shape a new idea. Shared governance, representation, limits on power. But the crown still burns brightly. At the end of the century, a new king takes the throne, Edward I, a warrior, a lawgiver, a builder of castles and breaker of wills. He will shape the next chapter. But for now, rest. Let the echo of Becket's martyrdom fade. Let the parchment of Magna Carta cool. Let the fires of rebellion die to embers. Sleep now in a land reshaped by ambition and by law, where kings no longer stand unchecked, and the voice of the people has begun, ever so softly, to rise. 7. Plague, War, and the Black Death, 1300–1400. The new century rises not with peace, but with dread in its bones. The fires of conquest have dimmed, but something colder takes their place. A shadow begins to stretch over Europe, slowly, quietly, and then all at once. It begins with a cough, a fever, a swelling beneath the skin, and then silence. The Black Death has come. In 1348, a ship arrives in Dorset. Rats scurry ashore, fleas leap from fur to flesh, and within weeks, death walks every road in England. It takes the poor first, then the monks, the midwives, the priests, the noblemen, the children. The bells toll endlessly. The graveyards fill. There are not enough hands to dig. Some pray, some panic, some vanish into the forests and never return. It is as though the very breath of God has withdrawn from the world. Between 1/3 and 1/2 of England's population will die. Yet from this devastation, something begins to stir. With fewer people to till the fields, the value of labor rises. Peasants begin to demand more pay, more rights. The old feudal order shudders. The chains of serfdom loosen. And for the first time, the foundations of power begin to crack. But the plague is not the only darkness. Across the Channel, in the green and golden fields of France, England fights a war that will last a lifetime and beyond. The 100 Years' War, it is later called, though no one fighting in it lives to see its end. It begins with a claim. King Edward III of England asserts his right to the French throne. The war drags on in phases: truce and battle, fire and harvest, victory and retreat. But in its early days, English arms shine bright. In 1346, at the Battle of Crécy, English longbowmen devastate a far larger French force. Their arrows fall like rain. The French knights charge again and again, only to fall beneath the storm. 10 years later, at Poitiers, Edward's son, the Black Prince, captures the King of France himself. The victory is staggering. Ransom is demanded. Castles change hands. But France does not break. Back in England, the cost of war and the burden of plague weigh heavy on the common folk. Taxes rise, anger builds, and in 1381 it erupts. The peasants revolt, led by Wat Tyler. Thousands of laborers, craftsmen, and farmers march on London. They burn manorial records. They demand an end to serfdom, an end to injustice, a better world. The young king, Richard II, meets them. He makes promises. He listens. But when Wat Tyler is murdered during negotiations, the revolt crumbles. The promises are broken. Still, the fear has been planted. The ruling class has seen what the people can do when they rise. As the century closes, the plague returns in waves. The land heals, then sickens again. The war in France drags on, and Richard II, once full of promise, grows proud, isolated, and cruel. In 1399, he is deposed by his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, who becomes Henry IV. It is the first time since the conquest that an English king is overthrown by another Englishman. A precedent has been set. The medieval world is beginning to tear at its seams. Faith, power, and tradition, nothing is untouched. And yet, the bells still ring, cathedrals still rise. In the midst of plague and war, the human spirit endures. It dreams, it writes, it sings. Geoffrey Chaucer, a courtier and poet, begins to pen the Canterbury Tales, a tapestry of voices from every corner of English life, from knights to millers, from nuns to wives of wandering hearts. In his pages, the heartbeat of medieval England echoes, warm and human. Now, rest in this strange century, a century of contradictions, of beauty and blood, of poetry and pestilence. Sleep in the memory of resilience. The worst has come, but England still stands, and the final storm has yet to break. 8. The Wars of the Roses and the Fall of an Age, 1455 to 1485. The sky darkens once more over England, not from plague or invasion, but from something more intimate. Brother against brother, cousin against cousin. The crown, heavy with blood and legacy, becomes a prize fought over not by foreign armies, but by the very branches of England's royal tree. 2 roses bloom, one red, one white. The House of Lancaster, with its red rose emblem. The House of York, bearing white. Both descend from this mighty Edward III. Both claim the right to rule. What begins as a whisper of discontent becomes a roar of civil war, known to history as the Wars of the Roses. In 1455, swords are drawn at the Battle of St. Albans. It is a small battle, but its echo is vast. Over the next 3 decades, England will be ravaged by a series of brutal conflicts, nearly a dozen major battles, countless betrayals, and a trail of shifting allegiances that twist like bramble. Kings are crowned and then cast down. Henry VI, gentle, devout, but weak, suffers bouts of madness. He loses the support of his lords, and the realm slips through his fingers. Edward IV, bold and strong, takes the throne in his place. For a while there is peace, but nothing lasts. After Edward's sudden death, his sons, young, innocent, and rightful heirs, vanish into the Tower of London. History remembers them as the princes in the tower. Their fate is a wound England never forgets. In their place rises Richard III, the boy's uncle, a man both complex and controversial. Some see him as a usurper, others as a stabilizer. He is brave in battle, devoted to law, and ruthless in court. But fate comes for Richard on a quiet morning in 1485. At Bosworth Field, he rides into battle against a new challenger, Henry Tudor, a descendant of Lancaster by blood and of Welsh legend by heart. Richard fights valiantly. He cries out, "A horse! A horse! My kingdom for a horse!" As his steed is slain beneath him, he refuses to flee. He dies sword in hand, the last English king to die in battle. With Richard's death, the crown passes to Henry VII, the first of the Tudor dynasty. He marries Elizabeth of York, uniting the red rose and the white, and with that union, the war ends. Not just a war of men, but of an age. The medieval world, so long defined by feudalism, chivalry, cathedrals, and cloisters, draws its final breath. Something new stirs on the horizon. The printing press, the Renaissance, the Age of Discovery, the Reformation. But for now, the land rests. The bones of knights sleep beneath church floors. The towers still stand, though their banners are faded. The fields bloom again, no longer stained with brothers' blood. England has endured plague, invasion, tyranny, and revolt. And yet it stands. Changed, scarred, wiser. The story of medieval England has ended. Not with a single voice, but with the echo of countless lives. Monks and queens, farmers and warriors, saints and rebels, scribes and poets. Now let your breath slow. Let the roses fall, petal by petal, into soft earth. Let the shadows of 1,000 years retreat like the tide. Sleep gently, traveler of time. The candles of the Middle Ages have burned low, and in their fading light, We see the silhouette of a new world beginning to rise. The story has been told. From the fall of Rome to the rise of the Tudors, we have drifted across the centuries, like leaves carried by the long breath of time. We have stood among the ruins of Roman towns, walked with monks in wind-swept cloisters, heard the clang of swords at Hastings and the soft crackle of plague fires in village hearths. We have felt the tremor of rebellion in fields of wheat and seen banners rise and fall beneath the gray English sky. But now, the tale slows, the echoes grow soft, and the centuries settle around you like a warm blanket. History does not end. It sleeps as you do now. And in this stillness, a few final thoughts may gently pass your mind, like the toll of a distant abbey bell in mist. Think of the thousands who lived lives never written down. The stable boy who whispered to his horse before dawn. The weaver who sang old songs while spinning flax in firelight. The woman who watched the stars and wondered what lay beyond them. The child who prayed without knowing to whom. The monk who lit one candle, night after night, in the dark heart of winter. They are all here, beneath the soil, beneath the words, beneath the pages of this long and quiet book. And though kings wore crowns and made history, it was these nameless many who lived it. They built the villages, dug the roads, raised the children, tended the fields, carried the grief, shared the laughter, made England what it became, not in war, but in daily breath. Perhaps in dreams you will visit them. You may walk a village lane in 10th century Wessex, smell bread in a Saxon oven, hear a bell call to mass in a Norman chapel, or feel the wind that once touched the cloaks of long-dead knights riding through the forests of Yorkshire. It is all still there, not in ruins, but in memory. Not in books alone, but in the soft soil of time that lives beneath your thoughts. So now, gentle soul, drift freely. Let the long hours of the past guide you into rest. You are safe. You are warm. You are surrounded by the quiet heartbeat of history. Sleep well, dreamer of ages. And if you should wake again beneath the stars, know that England still whispers, softly, patiently, as all old lands do. The story is always there, waiting. Sleep now. The Middle Ages have passed. And so may you, into dreams.